In this video, we're going to take a look at the noise modifier, which serves as a terrific way to change the shape of an object by adding a little random variation to the height or topology of its surface by way of a little behind-the-scenes math. The modifier can be used in a seamlessly endless number of applications, from making an object look weathered and worn, to creating the rippling effect that you would see with moving water, even being used to generate realistic landscapes and terrains. The more you use it, the more you'll definitely appreciate what the noise modifier can do. Let's take a look at a couple of examples to illustrate some of the possibilities. We'll start using a file named noise modifier. You can find it in the working files folder for this chapter. The noise, as mentioned, changes the shape of an object's surface by pushing and pulling it in different directions by way of a mathematical equation that's been programmed into the modifier. Let's go ahead and add a noise to our chamfer box, and we'll take a look at some of its controls. We'll select the object, then head over to the modifier list, adding the modifier. The most important setting on the modifier is its strength control, which can be adjusted to change the object's shape in one of three directions. Let's change the X strength to 250. With just that, you can see that we've made a radical change to the shape of the box. Let's see how things would look if we changed instead either the Y or the Z axis. Let's take the X strength back to 0, and for the Y strength, we'll input 250. What you see is the deforming nature of the noise now happening in a different direction. Let's try this. We'll take Y back to 0, and this time we'll take Z to 250. Now to do that, I'll first right-click and copy the 250 value. Then I'll right-click on the Y spinner, taking it to 0, then highlight the Z value. Once I've done that, I'll right-click again, this time from the menu, choosing Paste. To lock the number in, I'll then need to press Enter. So each strength axis changes the shape a little differently in a different direction. Let's see how things would look if we took all three strength values to 250. Once the numbers are in place, I'll again orbit around in my scene. I'm doing that by simply using the Alt middle mouse wheel shortcut. Okay, let's take all three strength values down to 10. There's also a setting called fractal that comes into play quite often. Turning it on adds an added degree of disfiguration to the surface, making the changes in shape more detailed and pronounced. Let's go ahead and activate that option. The noise effect that we're creating can even be animated. You'll find that setting a little bit farther down in the animation section. To activate it, you simply have to check the checkbox for Animate Noise. Now we can go ahead and play back our timeline. Why don't we try this? We'll turn Fractal off and we'll change all three strengths to 33. We'll then play things back again. Back in the animation category, you'll also see a setting called Frequency. This regulates the speed of the noise effect. Higher values makes the movement quiver faster, while using a lower frequency setting will produce a smoother and more gentle movement that's generated by that built-in mathematical function. Let's see how things would look using a frequency of 0.5. Let's also experiment with a frequency value of 0.1. You know, a little more practical application for noise would be using it in a scene to make something look a little older or a little more worn out. One of the biggest problems with creating something on the computer is that unless an effort's made to actually change things, everything you create has a tendency to come off looking as if it's brand new, as if it's just off the production line or just out of its original box. And that's not good, as everything comes off looking, well, computer generated. All you gotta do is slap a noise modifier on the object, and just that quickly you can magically age the way it looks. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is a file named Noise Teapot. It too can be found in the Working Files folder for this chapter. Let's select the object and add a noise modifier. Let's now change each of the three strength values to 15. Now, in altering the shape of the surface, that change we've made might be a little bit too subtle. So let's turn on the fractal option and see how that changes things. Well, now we're a little bit too heavy. All we want is a slight change to the overall shape of the teapot. Let's back the strength values off to, let's say, 4 apiece. Very nice. Now we have a teapot that looks like it's been around for a few years. Maybe it having taken a few nicks or bumps along the kitchen counter. Something that now looks a little more realistic that we can place in our scene. If you want to change the size of the noise effect, you can do that by adjusting the scale control. Lower values making for a smaller noise-like pattern. Let's take that value right to around 85. Now, during my initial comments, I also mentioned that noise could be used to create the effect of moving water. Let's take a look at how you do that. This is a file named Noise Moving Water. You can find it in the Working Files folder. The scene consists simply of a plain object that's had a few extra segments added in both directions. You'll be able to see the level of detail in our mesh if you select the object, then press F4 on the keyboard. Over in the Modify column, you'll notice that the length and width segments on the plane have both been taken to 75. That'll give us the added extra level of detail that we're going to need in order to make the water move realistically. Back in the viewport, we'll type F4 again to turn off edged faces. Okay, let's go ahead and get in the modifier list, adding the noise modifier. To change the object shape in an up and down direction, we'll now adjust the Z strength on the modifier to 10. Let's also turn on the Animate Noise feature and we'll play back our timeline. Why don't we see how things would look if we activated the fractal option? We'll do that, then play things back again. Now the movement does appear a little fast. We can slow that down by adjusting the noise's frequency setting. Let's change that value from 0.25 to 0.1. Once we have that entered, we'll play things back again. The movement on the water still appears to be a little bit too quick. Let's change our frequency to 0.05. That now looks better. If we wanted, let's say, a little bit bigger of a wave, all we'd have to do is increase the Z strength. Let's change that from its current setting of 10 up to 25. Playing things through, you now see the difference that's made. Now I am curious as far as maybe changing around the shading within our viewport. Up in the left-hand corner of the view, click where it says Realistic. Let's change that option to Shaded and see how that differs as far as the viewport display. Playing things back, I think that's a little bit easier to visually read. Let's also see if we can't smoothen the waves out just a tad by increasing the scale factor. Back toward the top, we'll change the scale from 100 to 250. Playing things back, you can see what a difference that's made. Let's also slow things down a bit. We'll take the frequency to 0.02. Now we've got what I think would be a little more realistic as to the movement in that large of a body of water. We could also, if we wanted, change the water's pattern a bit. You can plug that in simply by entering a different seed value. Just click on the spinner a couple times to see the difference. So that's what's happening with the noise modifier and a few of its uses. Tuck it away in your production toolbox and be sure to use it the next time a situation in your scene calls for it. I'm going to go ahead and save this out as Noise Moving Water Completed if you'd like to look it over.